Thank you very much for your patience and welcome to the September Carmel Clay School Board meeting. Whether you're joining us for the first time or coming back for a riveting meeting, we're happy you could join us. We do have a very big meeting planned for tonight. There's a slight change to the agenda that you have if you've picked it up. We will be doing the district update, our Spotlight on Excellence, prior to doing public participation, and then following the district update, we'll have a brief moment for visitors who would like to leave and tend to their studies or what have you. We'll have a little break that you can go do that. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started with roll call. Mrs. Freed.
Madam President, all school board members are present.
Excellent. Next, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand and join us as our Vice President, Mrs. Nels, leads us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next on our agenda, we have our very special presentations, and our first presentation is going to be brought to us by Mrs. Marlowe.
Good evening. I'm Jennifer Marlowe. I'm the Science Department Chair at Carmel High School. And on behalf of Mr. Williams and the Science Department, it is an honor to recognize David Liang tonight. David was a gold medal winner at the International Chemistry Olympiad competition in Moscow this summer. And just to give you a little bit of background information on that, over 10,000 students across the United States compete through a series of tests to try to make the top 4 students in the country, and that team competes in the International Olympiad competition. So David advanced from over 10,000 students down to 1,000 students to a final 20 students that were invited to a 2-week summer study. And actually he has participated in the summer study the last 2 summers, and this summer was named to the top 4 team that advanced on and competed in Moscow. And David was not only a gold medal winner in Moscow, but also had the highest score of all the team members for the U.S. national team. And those other 3 team members are freshmen at MIT, Stanford, and Cal Poly. So we are obviously very proud of David and want to congratulate him.
Then we have John Williams with us up here. We'll be presenting State of Indiana AP Scholars and National Merit semifinalists. Parents and students, thank you for being here this evening. And parents, congratulations to you. All the hard work and long hours that you've put in. And students, same to you. So it's a big family celebration tonight. And we're so proud that you're a part of the Carmel Clay family. And congratulations from the district. John?
Thank you, Dr. Wall, and to the board members. And Jen, thank you for doing that. And David, congratulations. David Liang outstanding, as you saw. He may be, as he goes through his career at Carmel, one of the most decorated academic students that we've had. And that, I will tell you, as my dad used to say, that grass is pretty tall at Carmel High School. So congratulations to David and his accomplishments. I am here to recognize 2 groups. One group only has 1 person in it, and that's significant, and that is the State AP Scholar Award. This award is granted to 1 male and the 1 female student in each United States and the District of Columbia with scores of 3 or higher on the greatest number of AP exams, and then the highest average scores on all AP exams. So in the country, there are 102 folks who get this award. Each state is able to pick 1 male and 1 female. They're not picked, they earn it. And it's kind of comparable, if you were thinking about athletics, to Mr. or Mrs. Basketball or Mr. Football. It's that kind of award. It's a very, very prestigious award. For our 2012-13 school year, this is last year, Carmel High School was once again proud to have one of the 2 students in the state of Indiana to be recognized with this award. Emily Waricati, who graduated with the class of 2013, earned the distinction of being the female student in the state of Indiana to earn this distinction. Emily is now attending University of Illinois. I have it from a very good source, and could not join us here tonight, but she is, I believe, represented by her parents. So if the parents could join us. Obviously, they weren't able to make it, but anyway, they were supposed to be here. Emily, of course, is off to college. Just to tell you a little bit about this award, AP is, as you know, our most rigorous courses, along with IB and some of our dual credit courses, but AP certainly fits with our most rigorous course that we offer at Carmel High School. To earn this distinction while a student at Carmel High School, Emily took 17 AP exams, 17, and that's an amazing number. And in that, she earned an average score of 4.53 on all of those exams, 5 being the best you could possibly earn. So again, we just said wow for David, and I think we could turn around and say wow for Emily. Another plug for David, I think David was one behind with 16 APs, and so he's got some work cut out for him. But again, amazing accomplishment. We really ask our kids to challenge themselves, and when you have this kind of results, and we had over 146 kids who were recognized at some level in the AP Scholar program. This is one of the highest. So we're very proud of what our kids do, and certainly want to acknowledge, Dr. Wall talked about the parents, and this is a group effort. We have many kids who are very talented, but to take that talent and step up to the plate, take the toughest courses that your school offers, and do that along with many of these kids heavily involved in our school co and extracurricular and leadership positions, says a lot about what these kids do, and you're going to get to meet 46 more of them in just a minute. Also, I think it's important to acknowledge the work of our staff. Our teachers are experts in these fields, and these kids take these courses because they know they're going to be taught with some of the best teachers in the state of Indiana. And these folks who teach our AP courses, they work hard, they're trained, and they're very, very professional. So it's really a team effort. Family support, kids willing to step up and take the tough courses, and a staff that's there to provide courses that are meaningful and are useful to these kids when they leave school. So feel really good about that. Next, speaking of outstanding academic achievement, it is my pleasure to introduce one of our counselors, Chris Hartman. Chris is going to join me up here, and she's going to introduce to you this year's National Merit semifinalists. We do this every year. We're very proud of the number of kids that we have that qualify for this amazing distinction. Once again, Carmel High School led the state. By far led the state in the number of National Merit semifinalists. It's a huge distinction. It's an amazing accomplishment. We informed the kids about 2 weeks ago, but they're so smart they already knew before we informed them. But we tell them a couple things about this accomplishment. And what it is, it's based upon their junior year PSAT test that our juniors are we're going to be taking in a couple of weeks here. So these seniors, they took the test as a junior, and then the College Board, which administers the AP program and the PSAT test, they decide a cut score, and if you're above that cut score, you qualify as a National Merit semifinalist. To put that in perspective, 1.5 million kids took that test last year across this country in over 22,000 high schools. Only 16,000 earned that distinction. So if you do the math, between 16,000 kids and 22,000 high schools, a school should get about 0.7 National Merit finalists or semifinalists. Carmel High School had 46. And again, we're a large school. Certainly it counts for some of it. But even if you compare us to the other large schools across the country and in our state, our numbers are great. And again, I think it speaks to just what I talked about a minute ago. parents who are there for their kids, kids who are willing to step up, and we tell these kids they certainly should be grateful for their intelligence. That's something that they were given. But what they should be proud of, and I think what this award represents, is the effort they've made with that intelligence, because there are kids who are just as smart as some of these kids that aren't here tonight for whatever reasons. So these students have taken that natural gift they have and they've stepped up, using again our staff that works very, very hard to accomplish this amazing goal. They represent less than 1% of all students taking this exam. I asked Chris to read the names tonight because she's better at reading names than I am, but also I think it's very appropriate that counseling should be introducing these folks. These counselors are heavily invested in these students, and the next phase is when they go from a National Merit semifinalist to becoming competing for a National Merit finalist status, where they look at more than just the score on their PSAT. They start looking at their overall transcript. The students have to write an essay about themselves and their goals, and then they have to have someone who knows them write a personal recommendation letters, and our counselors heavily involved in that. One of the things that we are also proud of is that most of our National Merit semifinalists become National Merit finalists, because certainly we have talented kids that certainly qualify and deserve it, but our counselors work very, very hard with our kids to make sure they get all the things in on time and that the letters are done well. So, Chris, thank you for being here tonight.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Williams. I'm so happy to be here to help honor these semifinalists and this great accomplishment that they have made in getting here. I'm going to try to do justice to each of your names, but please forgive me if I don't. But I'll read through, and if you could, one at a time, come up and get your certificates from Dr. Wall, and then come through and shake hands with each of the board members. We'll start with Claudia Benz. Levi Bernstein. Asta Bargava. Jessica Chang. Ho Young Chi. William Elliott. Cheyenne Fischero. Katie Gow. Taylor Hathaway. Eric He. Eva Hernandez. Shelby Heiter. Yushi Homa. Claudia Huang. Anthony Coe. Rachel Krieger. Jack Langston. Charles Liang. David Liang. Noah Liebeck. Grace Ma. Samir Munchada. Aaron Miller. Parmido Mustabavi. Julie Puckett. Kim Chen. Hafsa Razi. Zachary Schleich. Kushal Shah. Maggie Speak. Patrick Tan, Jocelyn Tao, Aining Wang, Alice Wang, Andrew Wang, Christine Wang, Eric Wang, Zachary Wang, Kyle Weaver, Eric Wiegand, Tobias Vramerfash, Brandon Shu, Sophia Yin, Hongda Zhang, Alyssa Zhao, Aaron Zhao. Congratulations to all our semifinalists.
Well, next on the agenda, we have our Spotlight on Excellence and our district update. We try to focus on our Spotlight on Excellence to give everybody in the audience and those who watch it, and as well as the board, an opportunity to learn about some neat program going on in the district. So tonight we have the Carmel Clay Education Foundation. Joining us with the foundation, we have Mrs. Dankquist and Mrs. McDonald, who are going to be showcasing some really fun opportunities.
Thank you very much. Good evening. I'm Barbara Dankquist, and this is Stephanie McDonald. And she and I are the co-executive directors of the Carmel Education Foundation. And we're here for two purposes. One, we want to thank you. We want to thank the school board. We want to thank the administration. We want to thank the teachers and the staff. We want to thank the PTOs. We want to thank parents and students. By supporting our events, Ghosts and Goblins 5K, 2K, which Mrs. McDonald's going to talk about because it's coming up again, the showcase, that was 1,000 students singing at the Clay Middle School last February, along with the fact that they were doing it for our foundation as a thank you. They came and sang, and we were able to raise money to give back to the music programs of the schools that attended. The telethon, the 27th annual telethon, that, thank heavens, the National Honor Society had agreed to call different parents and community groups to help us raise money. And all this money helped us, the Carmel Education Foundation, to recognize our Carmel Clay teachers and staff members through Thank a Teacher Honor Roll, those of you that use this wonderful form to send a certificate to a teacher, a bus driver, a staff member that you felt had really done something special for your children. The Teacher of the Year Award, grants, and all our other programs. We thank you very much for your support, and we look forward to having you with us again.
Yes, thank you so much for having us. As you entered, back on the little table, there are these little save the date cards. We would really like for you to pick one of these up because this is about our Ghosts and Goblins 5K, 2K walk run, which is going to be held on October 26th at Carmel High School. This is one of the ways in which we make money for our teacher grants and other programs that we, in fact, are able to do through the Carmel Education Foundation. We have open registration. It's online. You can go to our website. You can go home tonight and sign up for the Ghosts and Goblins. So far, we have 85 people that are signed up to participate, and we anticipate hopefully, about 1,200 to 1,500. So you might want to get in line and get that registration done really soon. A couple of things about our walk run. The elementary schools are having a contest with a traveling trophy. The elementary school who has the most participants of students and staff will get the traveling trophy that gets to be in their school for a whole year. West Clay Elementary has won it the last 3 years. We have a lot of people that are going to try to take that away from West Clay this year. So if you have family and relatives in the elementary schools, might want to put that on your calendar. Also, our middle schools, we have a banner contest. The middle school that has the most participants of students and staff will receive a banner that they can hang for the year, or they can keep it hung up for however long because it's theirs, but we recognize them for the year for what they have done. This year, we are partnering with the National Honor Society. You have just met a bunch of them that are going to help us. So all of you that are helping us for the Ghosts and Goblins, would you please stand? You students? Yes. Thank you so much. You also will be hearing their voices probably at the telethon that some of them have even called for us before, because the National Honor Society does come and help us with the Key Club for our telethon. So we appreciate their participation. We have several of them that are going to be chairs of different committees that are going to be working with us for Ghosts and Goblins. So you'll see them out and about Carmel advertising for us, as well as the day of the event, to actually help things run smoothly. This year we have to tell you one little fun thing that we have going. We made T-shirts optional, that you can go in and purchase those when you sign up, because we wanted to keep the registration prices at a nice, affordable level. But the T-shirts glow in the dark. Yes, so this is really something. So you got to get online and purchase your glow in the dark T-shirts, because those will really, really, really make it special for you to have for the event and after the event. We also have a costume contest, and you can come all dressed up. Dr. Wall is going to lead our 5K. He has already consented to being there to lead us in our event, so we thank you for that. And we look forward to seeing all of you at the Ghosts and Goblins on October 26th. Any questions? Our business cards are also on the table. Please help yourself. Give us a call or email us, and we will be more than happy to fill you in on any other information. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Barbara and Stephanie. And as promised, we're going to break for just a couple minutes and allow families that are here that might want to take their children home to do, study, what have you. We'll go ahead and break now, just 2 minutes. Thank you. Next, we're going to get to public participation. I would like to remind those, and actually we just have one gentleman who's going to get up to speak, but I would like to remind you that you have 2 minutes, or actually 3 minutes, to share your thoughts with the board. We have lights at the podium, yellow to indicate you have 30 seconds. The red will illuminate when your time is up, and a beep might follow. So with that, we have Bob Turner. So Bob, please join us.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate the opportunity to address you. And I have to commend Carmel Schools for the outstanding support they have with the students and the activities that
Could you
they're
please
doing.
speak into the microphone?
Yes.
Or close to it.
Sorry.
Thank you so much.
I congratulate the students and I congratulate the staff. That's a clear reflection on what you're doing here. Experience excels, obviously shows. The purpose for my being here tonight is my name is Bob Turner. I'm with AXA Advisors. We are one of the 403B providers in Carmel Schools. I've enjoyed that relationship for over 28 years, and I'd like to continue that relationship. The reason I'm here tonight, I've got some concerns. I will simply have you take one of those and pass those around if you will, please. I work in a number of school districts, and the three concerns that I have very quickly are, as a benefits provider in most school corporations, we have access to the staff. In Carmel Schools, unfortunately, we're excluded from visiting with staff in the buildings. I would like to see that changed if it could be, or some kind of change is made. The second area that I have a concern with is I've been with the corporation since the matching had begun, and when that was first established, it was my understanding that 1% of the corporation or 1% of the employees' dollars could be contributed, with the idea that the other percent could be contributed to one provider. It's my understanding currently that 1% of the employees' contribution has to go with AIG VALIC, and that's mandated, rather than choosing which corporation provider is available. The third item is Carmel personnel, several clients and employees have called in to the administration office inquiring as to who is eligible for the 403B, what companies. And I've had clients indicate to me that they've been told that only one company of the four that are on that sheet is the sole provider. And I don't know if things have changed. I'd like to just kind of improve our relationship and go forward in an aspect where your employees also have an open door to learning what benefits are available. And if there's anything that I can do to help in organizing that, I would be glad to do so. If there are any questions by the board, I'd be happy to take those.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Turner. And if we do have questions, we will send those to you.
Very good.
Okay. Thank you.
I appreciate very much your time.
Next, we have consent. May I get a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Moving right along, we have reports, and I believe we have Mr. Pfeiffer with a negotiation update for us.
Thank you. I'm pleased to present this report to the board and the public tonight. Starting out with a little background, it's clear that the board and administration very much support teachers. Sometimes we ask, well, where do we stand compared to other districts around the state? In Carmel Clay, I'm pleased to report it's in the top 10 districts in Indiana in career earnings, as you can see on the slide. The board, the administration, all of us understand how hard teachers work and value them greatly. In fact, we've got 3 board members who are former teachers. I'm a former teacher. 2 of our board members taught in Carmel. 2 of our board members bargained for teachers as the association's president. We all know in Indiana that through no fault of any of us in this room, we have some physical challenges like all state school systems do. State's been reducing the funding, very little what we call new money or additional money from one year to the next. In fact, for the calendar year 2013, there was only $218,000 of new money. In terms of a pay raise for school teachers, that would be less than 0.5%. If all of that new money were directed, that's all it would amount to. So fortunately, this district and this board has had the foresight to take other steps to try and address this funding situation, and that's why you passed a referendum. As you can see, when we passed it, it was a $12 million referendum because of some changes in tax laws. We now think it will yield $14 million. And that's what's really enabled this district to add teachers, keep class sizes low, pay for salary and benefit increases well beyond that 0.5% or less than 0.5% that the state provided. So quickly, the status of the 2012-13 negotiations. You know, we bargained, we went to mediation. One of the issues was the scope of bargaining. This was the first year under the new bargaining law, last year when we were doing the bargaining. And the bargaining law says that you can only bargain over salary, wages, and salary and wage-related fringe benefits, and specifically says it's against the law to include anything else in your contract. As we went through the bargaining, all of the association's proposals to the board contained provisions that the state guidance told us were unlawful, so the things that would be unlawful to include in a contract. We also had disagreement about economic terms. Now, as I said, the board and administration support teachers, and we wanted to provide significant increases and offered those. As you can see here, and we've been over this before, but these are the increases that we offered in our best offer. This is what was offered during negotiations. And that was an average of a 2.5% increase. The way that broke down was a $1,500 increase for those who were not at the top or the bottom of the scale. That was the equivalent of the old increment. And then a 1% pay increase for all the first-year teachers and the teachers who were at the top of the scale. Another 1% of base pay being paid out as a salary stipend to teachers. Of course, all these increases would be retroactive to the beginning of the past school year. A performance bonus pool of $500,000, 5 days of professional development paid at $1,250, and then an incentive to try and get people to try the high deductible savings account that our insurance experts tell us would benefit many of our teachers and other employees, and also reduce the cost for those employees and for the district. So to try and encourage people to try that, we offered a $2,000 contribution to each person's HSA account if they were on one of the 3 family plans, and a $1,000 contribution to that account if they were on a single plan. And then, of course, the board was also going to pay a little over $500,000 to offset increases in health insurance for the existing health coverage for the teacher complement. So how would we have done that? Well, as you know, and as we've talked before, some would have come from current operating expenses. About $3.5 million would have come from your cash balance. And that's about 25% of your cash balance that you offered to spend in that one-year contract for last year. So in terms of what this would mean for a typical teacher, average teacher in Carmel, $55,000 salary. You can see the salary increase, the stipend, the bonus, and so forth adds up to $5,800, which would have been 10.5% of their salary. So that was what we offered during negotiations, and that was what we're calling our best offer. Unfortunately, we weren't able to reach agreement, so as all of you know, we went into state-required fact-finding. There's no choice about that. The law mandates it. And the law mandates that in fact-finding, a school district cannot spend any of its cash balance. You're restricted to only spending money that's available that year. So your revenues for that year and your expenses can't be out of kilter. You can't have expenditures that exceed your current year revenues. As I said, we were funding our best offer with $3.5 million from the cash balance. So that meant when we had to put together our last best offer, which is really a misnomer, but the LBO, when we had to put that together in order to comply with state law, we had to reduce our best offer by about $3.5 million. So you may ask the question, if the LBOs were filed in November, which they were November of last year, why don't we have a ruling yet? Well, shortly before the fact-finding that was going to be scheduled in December of last year, the association filed an unfair labor practice charge against the board, and the association got a stay from the fact-finding proceedings until there was a ruling on the alleged unfair labor practice charge. And that took time, unfortunately. And it's only been recently that first the administrative law judge and then the IRB themselves ruled in favor of the board, said there was no unfair labor practice committed, and therefore, because there was no merit to that charge of an unfair labor practice, they lifted the stay. And that just happened in the last few weeks. So now we're proceeding. As you know, Friday night we had our fact-finding hearing here, and the fact-finding judge said that she would be making decisions. She said she might be able to make it even this week, but certainly by the end of the month. So our state-required LBO, as I said, it's a lot less than we offered during bargaining because the law required that, but we are offering the maximum amount permitted by law. It does not reflect what you wanted teachers to get. It does not reflect how you value them. We all wanted to provide more, but we weren't able to get that done. But our LBO, in order to comply with the law, we had to reduce our offer to 2% salary increase retroactive to the beginning of the year, and that's really only a net 1%, because what we were saying was eliminate the 1% match on the 403B plan and put it on the salary scale. So one of those 2% increases really just shifting the money from one place to another. We also had a 0.5% of a stipend for all teachers, a $275,000 bonus pool, and continued to pay the little over $500,000 in the board's additional payment towards health insurance. It would have also, in our LBO, replaced the catastrophic leave bank with a short-term disability policy. The district would pay 100% of the cost of that short-term disability policy. We thought it would help more teachers because it covers maternity leave, which is not covered under the catastrophic leave bank. And just by way of example, in 2011 and 12, we had only 5 teachers who used the leave bank, but we had 57 teachers who took maternity leaves. Now, short-term disability doesn't pay as much. It doesn't pay 100%. It pays 2/3. And so in our proposal, we were going to let teachers use sick days if they wanted to sort of gross up or get their pay up to 100% for those short-term disability days. There are a number of other changes that went over Friday night, and so I won't go through all those again tonight, but they're all available on the board's webpage from the fact-finding hearing that was held Friday night. In any event, we believe the association's LBO results in deficit financing and contains unlawful provisions, and we talked about that Friday night, went through all that. Both sides made presentations, but just a couple things to remind you that the association's LBO contained a provision that said teachers would work 450 minutes per day, and that would be called their instructional wages, and that all their compensation on the salary table would be for those minutes, and that any other work over those minutes, the board would have to pay teachers time and a half for those minutes over 450. We know our teachers work really hard. We know that many of them put in a lot more than a standard 40-hour work week. But just estimating conservatively, if teachers worked a 40-hour standard week during the school year, that would have resulted in about $33 million in additional compensation and deficit financing. We also think that pay-by-the-minute plan is something that IRB, the state agency that rules on these things, we also think that's a type of pay system that IRB has already ruled to be unlawful in the Nettle Creek case that they had last year. Now, that case is still under appeal, but the IRB decision was that that type of overtime system was unlawful. An issue that's come up is, well, if the district's LBO goes into place, these things like the 401(3)B match or differences in number of personal business days, will teachers have to give anything back if the LBO goes into place and it's retroactive to the beginning of last school year? And we talked about that at the hearing Friday night, and we asked that the fact finder apply our LBO and make it effective October 1, except for those provisions that have to do with retro pay. And those retro pay provisions would go back to the beginning of the school year. That way teachers would get all of their retro pay, but you wouldn't have to have any givebacks. There wouldn't have to be any sort of taking the sick leave bank and the short-term disability policy and somehow trying to figure out which one's which for these things that have already happened. So as I say, we presented a way to implement our LBO that would not result in teachers having to give back anything, and yet still enable those teachers to get their full retro pay. We were concerned in suggesting that it might create an appealable issue that might cause this to get tied up even longer and further in these legal proceedings that have been going on. So at the fact-finding hearing, we asked the association if they would agree that if the fact-finder did choose our LBO and implemented it that way, that they wouldn't appeal on the basis of that implementation plan. Still reserve their right to appeal having chosen our LBO, but just not appeal the implementation plan, so that if ours was chosen, we could get this done in a way not to have any givebacks. The association didn't agree to it, but we nevertheless asked the fact finder to do it anyway, because we really don't want, and it's not our intent, to try and have any sort of givebacks or paybacks. So now turning to this year, the 2013-14 negotiations. In terms of our chronology, on July 29th, the association contacted us to ask to set up bargaining dates. That same day, I responded and asked the association to send us possible days and times to meet. A couple days later, the association did that, and then the day after that, we agreed to one of the dates that they had suggested, which was August 8th, so that was our first meeting. We met on August 8th, and at the end of the meeting, we went ahead and agreed on a succession of bargaining dates throughout the 60-day period that the state provides for bargaining. So those were mutually agreed upon that very first night. And then as you see here, we've held a number of additional bargaining sessions throughout that time period. The primary component of the current board offer on the table I wanted to review that's been presented to the association, and again a cautionary note that we're still bargaining and neither side has said this is our final or best offer, so we're still in the process, but this is just an update. And what you have here is an update as of the 17th, but we bargained tonight, so I will tell you one of the changes that we made this evening. But in our offer, it would reinstate the 4 personal days. It would reinstate the hourly calculation based on 6 hours instead of 8 that was in the LBO. It would reinstate the 1% 403B match. It would still have the short-term disability replace the catastrophic leave bank, and for all the reasons that we've talked about before. But we did add, because an issue brought up that we really hadn't thought about, the association brought up the issue, well, what about days that the teachers donated? There are a whole lot of days in the bank, thousands. Most of those were days that retirees gave to the bank as they were leaving because there wasn't a system to pay them out. So those days weren't worth anything to the retirees, but there was an agreement that they could donate them to the bank. Teachers have also donated some days. I don't think there's been an allotment of days or a donation of days since at least maybe 03 or so. Most of the teachers here have donated 1 or at most 2 days. But in any event, that issue came up, so we said, you know, whatever days a current active teacher donated, they'll get credited back. They'll get credited back. So it's not like we're giving up anything for that. We've proposed a salary model, the district salary model, and this is very important. It's a salary schedule that has the same steps and the same lanes as we had in the 08 to 12 contract. The only difference is that every cell has been increased by 2%, been moved up by 2% from the 11-12 contract. Each teacher not already at the top of the salary schedule under offer would move up. It's a letter now instead of a number, but move up a step in our own terminology or receive an increment. Unless prohibited by law, because we know that the new law says that you have to have an effective or highly effective evaluation to get any sort of pay increase, and if you don't, the law prohibits you from getting a pay increase. We know that the vast, vast majority of our teachers are going to qualify for pay increases. We think our schedule is even better for teachers in a number of circumstances than the one that the Indiana State Teachers Association put together. But there are some aspects of that ISTA model that may be better. So we've offered as an alternative either our model or the ISTA model to the association. And this is what our model looks like, as you can see. It's the same, what we used to call lanes across the top, and then letters down the side, and it continues on to the next page as you move up through all the steps. As we say, we've got to implement the model consistent with applicable legal requirements. but the way we would weight the factors is that if you get that effective or highly effective, you move up a step. And if you get your degree, you move over a lane. So on the left to right movement, there are some state requirements that academic credentials, you can't have more than a third of your increase be attributable to the academic credentials. So to the extent that one of our lane movements would cause a teacher in a given year to have more than 30% be attributable to that lane change, then we would say you get the maximum amount you can get, and to the extent there's more on top of that we'd like to give you, we'll give you that to you in the next year or as soon as we can afterwards, and still comply with the law that has this 30% rule. For teachers who are earning degrees right now, as you know, the law did grandfather many of you in, that if you started your degree before the identified date, finish it before the identified date, then you don't have to worry about that 30% rule. You get the whole increase right away. So in our proposal, of course, we're proposing that as well. And then we also had in our proposal that we have the discretion to place newly hired teachers where we deem it appropriate, and then as soon as they're placed, the contract would control their movement during their employment. And that's because, again, all districts are having challenges with funding and want to try and look at maybe being able to do some things differently or more creatively in order to make sure that we're continuing to get and retain the best teachers. Health insurance, it has the $1,000 contribution for single and the $2,000 for the family plan, like I described a moment ago. And there was some concern about, well, if you have this incentive and a lot of people go to that high deductible plan, will that cause one of the other plans to go away? Because there's a provision in the contract that says if you have less than 20% of the teachers in a plan, then the plan goes away. And so there's this concern about, well, what if I try it, I don't like it, and then the plan went away? I can't go back. So it seemed like a disincentive to try it. So what we have proposed is that we would not eliminate that 20% rule would stay in the contract, but would not be effective until at least 2016. January 2016 would be the first time a plan would be eliminated. So somebody could try it in 2014. If they didn't like it, they'd still have the same plan option to go back to in 2015. We also have a bonus pool. That's actually, it says $200,000 in tonight's session. That was increased to $250,000 for effective and highly effective teachers. And like I said, again, we're still bargaining. And as you know from our discussions, and I've told the associations team, this is not a school district where you give your bargaining team authority and say, well, here's your authority, but sure would be nice if you could come in a little under that. This board wants these teachers to get all of the money that we think we can afford, balancing fiscal responsibility. And so just like last year, we will put the full authority out and make sure everybody knows that that's a full authority. We're not trying at all to bargain or get a deal for less than full authority. So in terms of our offer at this point, what does it mean for a teacher? And you can see the beginning teacher there, and with from the 11-12 salary schedule and the salary increase, 6.9%, the bonus, the HSA contribution, and the total being about 13.4% of their 11-12 salary. A more typical teacher would be $55,000. We took one of the cells, $55,051. And you can see again a 5.3% increase on salary and an overall increase of 9.7%. So what happens next? Well, we continue to bargain. If we're unable to reach an agreement by October 1, then we'll have mediation. If we're unable to reach an agreement in mediation, unfortunately, we would be back in fact-finding again. None of us wants that to happen. We certainly hope it doesn't happen, because if it does, just like last year, we'll be required to put together what's called the state-required LBO, and that state-required LBO, once again, we won't be able to use any cash balance to fund it. So it means really that no matter whose LBO is selected, since they both have to use only current year revenue and expenditures, it's very likely teachers would get less because the cash balance can't be used to fund either LBO, the associations or the districts. Disappointing, we went through fact-finding last year, disappointing that the $3.5 million we put on the table for last year isn't going to get to our teachers, and really don't want that to happen again, and we're all trying to work to avoid that. Some of this is the same information, just packaged differently. A lot of people like question and answer rather than slides. Some of it's new. I'll go through the stuff that's repetition rather quickly. How does compensation compare? We've already talked about that. We're in the top 10. Is it true administrators received a 6% raise? We've heard that buzz around. Yes, some administrators did receive a 6% recurring raise from the 11-12 year to the 13-14 year. And under the proposal we have on the table to the association, some teachers would receive a 6.9% increase recurring from the 11-12 to the 13-14 year. And then let's look at another comparison. Well, how would administrators and teachers compare if they're at the top of their respective schedules? They would fare identically. They would both get a 2% increase. Does a board state-required LBO for 12 and 13 fairly reward teachers? I've talked about that. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Our teachers should be getting more. But it's the most we could give and still comply with the law. Does the board get to decide which LBO is chosen for last year? No. We had the fact-finding hearing Friday night. The fact-finder will decide that. And like I say, hopefully we'll get a decision shortly. If the board's LBO is chosen, will they have to pay back? I've already covered that point. If the fact finder implements it the way we suggested, the answer to that question is no. We suggested a way that that teachers get full retro pay but don't give back anything. So we've heard a lot about this 403B and the 1%. Why did we propose eliminating it? Well, a couple reasons. First, a teacher had to actually give 1% to the 403B plan to get the match. And if that 1% that the board was contributing goes on the salary schedule, the teacher can go ahead and divert it right into the 403B plan and have it just like it was the prior year. No difference. But if the teacher wants to use it a different way, they can use it a different way. In addition, we had some people who weren't putting money in the match, so those teachers didn't get anything out of the 403B match, but they would get it if we put it on the salary schedule. And of course, as it says there, it also helps with the turf computations to have a higher salary, helps with the pension compensations and so on. But in any respect, because that caused some issues, in our current proposal, we've put the match back in our offer. Our negotiations continuing, yes, we've already talked about that. And we've already talked about the salary model that we have, which again has the same steps and lanes as the one we had here before the new law came into effect from 2011 and 12, except for that 2% increase. Rewarding degrees, I've already talked about that. It would give teachers the maximum that we're allowed by law when they make a lane change, and then get the rest to them as soon as possible after the lane change has been made. And then going forward, as I said, in our proposal, it would be the 6 hours, which benefits teachers by having higher hourly rate than if you use the 8 hours that was in the LBO. That concludes my report.
Well, thank you very much. It was a very comprehensive report, and as board members, we certainly do appreciate that. I believe you know this, but I did want to share, we as board members were very disappointed that we were unable to achieve the outcome that we had wanted. To reward teachers well for the hard work that they're doing. As a result, we ended in the state-mandated fact-finding, and we certainly hope that this session of negotiations will have a more positive outcome. So thank you very, very much. We appreciate your work for the board on behalf of the district, and keep up the good work. Hopefully we can work well and have a positive outcome, so thank you. Moving right along, we have action, and our first action item, actually the next 4 action items, come to us from Mr. McMichael.
Okay. Excuse me. This action is requesting additional appropriation be approved for the general fund and the transportation fund. Excuse me. These budgets were developed in the summer of 2012, and since that time we've had either have had or have projected increased costs for such things as salary and fuel costs. The additional appropriation has no impact to the tax rate, as we have the funds. The appropriation gives us the authority to actually use the funds that we already have. Some of you may remember that in the summer of 2012, when the budgets were developed, we did anticipate a cost in salaries, for example, that was equivalent to increment, although we knew the traditional understanding of increment would not be allowed by law. I did allow that cost amount, or did include that cost, or an amount equivalent to that cost, in the 2013 budget. As you just heard this evening, since that time, we're now bargaining for 2013-14, and the proposal, for example, that's currently on the table from the school board is in excess of just the increment. So thus the anticipated or potential need for additional appropriation. Of course, if we don't need the appropriation, obviously we won't use it or therefore spend the money. So I would ask for approval to process with the state the first a public hearing, and then ultimately we would ask the state to approve the additional appropriation.
Thank you very much, Mr. McMichael. May I get a motion? Actually, Mr. Phillips.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the board authorize the administration to advertise a public hearing for October the 28th regarding an additional appropriation of $1,500,000 for the general fund and $400,000 for the transportation fund.
Second.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Next.
This next item is referred to as a temporary transfer of funds, and it's actually described as an emergency transfer. That labeling is not quite what it implies. It simply allows an interfund loan to be taken and not repaid until after January the 1st. A typical temporary loan, which we do these routinely for just cash flow purposes. We will borrow from one school district fund to another because, for example, property tax, since we receive property tax only twice a year, in transportation, for example, where salaries are being paid every 2 weeks, we do interfund loans to keep the transportation fund in the black each month, which is required by statute. But this particular request would allow a loan to be made, in this case from the general fund to the debt service fund, and not repaid until after January. Now, the reason for that is, well, first, the reason for the need for the loan in the first place is our debt service fund was reduced almost $500,000 as a result of the circuit breaker statutes. Now, we have the potential to have sufficient funds in our operating balance in our debt service fund, but we do not have those funds available this year. And so, subject to this transfer, what we would intend to do is advertise sufficient tax rate in the debt service fund to include not only the amount of funds necessary to repay our debt payments, but also sufficient cash balance to allow to repay this loan. We are permitted to carry up to 6 months of an operating balance in the debt service fund, which in our case is $8 or $9 million. So here we're talking about less than $500,000. So it becomes more or less a bookkeeping matter to borrow from our general fund until the 1st of January, and then we would repay that loan back from our own debt service fund back to the general fund.
Thank you very much, Roger. Excuse me. May I get a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Discussion. Mr. Phillips?
Yes. Roger, I was just glancing at the attached resolution, and I see that it provides for $400,000. Is that a typographical error, or?
Yes, I didn't catch that myself, but it should be 500,000.
So the intention is for 500,000?
Yes.
So if we approve this motion, it would be my understanding that we're approving 500,000.
That's correct, and I appreciate you catching that, because
Thank you.
And I understand why, because we originally wrote it for 400, thinking we may have enough of miscellaneous revenue coming into the fund from, like, excise tax, for example. But again, to be sure, I later increased it to 500,000, but obviously missed changing the number in the resolution itself.
So 500,000.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you for catching that, Mr. Phillips. Any other discussion items? Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion is adopted. Next.
Okay, next is the 2013-14 goals for expenditure categories. This is something that has become an annual routine since 2007-2008 school year, when the state legislature saw fit to require every school district in the state to go through this annual process of establishing goals for expenditure categories. Essentially what they did was what the state did was to say, we want every district to try to spend as much money on direct instructional student learning as possible. And so as you read these goals, that's what we're saying. We're going to try to achieve that. Of course, Carmel and most every other school district that I'm aware of has always had that as a goal. But this somewhat formalized it in terms of now requiring that you adopt these goals. Frankly, the goals haven't changed since 2007, 2008. And they were really our goals prior to that required legislation. But nevertheless, it's in statute that the board must adopt goals relative to expenditure categories, and so that's what this report represents.
Thank you. May I get a motion? Mr. Phillips?
Thank you, Mrs. President. I move that the board adopt the goals for the 2013-2014 expenditure categories as outlined by Roger.
Second.
Second.
Discussion? Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Next.
Okay, excuse me. This last item is a closeout change order for the demolition of what was still referred to as Old College Wood, but it was more recently the Hamilton Boone Madison Administration Center. And it's a little over $30,000 deduct change order.
May I get a motion?
I move we approve this deduct change in budget, or what is it called?
Deduction in the change order. Second? Mrs. Hackett-Beecham?
Oh.
Okay. Discussion.
If we approve this twice, do we get $60,000 back?
No, but I'll give you a free garden plot that's currently available at the same location that the school formerly was located.
Is it in the A section?
It is.
Okay.
Yours will be, for sure.
Okay. All in favor of approving the deduction? Aye. Great. Next.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. McMichael. Next, we have a number of policies from Dr. Dillon, so get ready.
Good evening. Thank you very much. Let our technology catch up here with us. Thank you. Thank you. Tonight I bring to you several bylaws and policies for a second reading. These were brought to you for a first reading at your last board meeting. If you remember, this first part of our presentation is a bit confusing. It's a lot of deleting, renaming, changing, improving, and so bear with us as we move through this as rapidly as possible, but also to make sure that we answer everyone's questions. So let's start off with two bylaws, 0151, organizational meeting, and 0154, motions. These are both revised bylaws. They were brought to our attention and proposed by Neola. They have been reviewed extensively by the Policy Committee, and they were first presented to you 2 weeks ago. The Policy Committee is proposing that bylaw 0154 motions be deleted and combined with bylaw 0151 organizational meeting. This is a recommendation that was first brought to your attention 2 weeks ago. Madam President.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Dillon. I will take these as separate agenda items, even though they have some overlap. So looking at the second reading of bylaw 151, organizational meetings, may I get a motion? Mrs. Hackett?
So move to adopt the bylaw 0151, organizational meetings, as posted on our agenda.
Okay. Second?
I second.
Mr. Phillips, discussion. Okay. All in favor?
I just want to compliment the committee and Dr. Dillon for shepherding us through this maze of changes. It's an important job, but it must have been very, very frustrating to pull all that together.
It was an attempt on who's on first. No, they're on second, but we got through the process, and
you did.
I do believe that when we're done, it'll be a much better and easy to understand document. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. And with that, any other discussion? Great. All in favor of bylaw 151, organizational meetings?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next, we have our second reading of bylaw 154, which is, in essence, to eliminate that particular bylaw, so titled motions. May I get a motion? Yes.
Madam President, I move that we eliminate bylaw 154 on motions.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next.
Thank you very much. Next, we move into the 0160 category, meetings, starting with that bylaw. This is a new and a revised group of bylaws. They were proposed to us by Neola. We have reviewed them extensively with the policy committee, and again, they were first brought to your attention 2 weeks ago. These bylaws have been changed to address the 2012 and the 2013 amendments to the open door law. There's quite a list of them, so we'll move through them one at a time. Beginning with bylaw 0164.4, meetings of the board defined. This is a new bylaw, and it goes into extensive detail on the meetings of this board.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dillon.
You're welcome.
May I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I'll second. Discussion. Okay, all in favor of supporting bylaw 0164.4, meeting of the board defined?
Aye.
Aye. Wonderful. Next.
Thank you. Next on our list, bylaw 0165, notice of board meetings. This also is a new bylaw, and this goes into great detail about how we must notice the world about our board meetings.
May I get a motion on the table? Mrs. Hackett?
I move to approve bylaw 0165, notice of board meetings, as presented.
May I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Discussion. All in favor? Aye. Next.
Thank you, Madam President. Next on our list, bylaw 0165.1, notice of regular meetings. This is revised. It's recommended deleting and the content included in 0165, which we just passed.
May I get a motion to delete bylaw 0165.1? Mrs. Knowles.
I move to delete the bylaw 0165 as noted in our agenda.
165.1.
165.1, yes, and move it to 0165.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Okay, Mrs. Freed. Thank you. Discussion. Great. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Next.
Thank you. Next on our list is bylaw 0165.2, notice of special board meetings. This is revised. It includes a title change and revised bylaw dealing with special board meetings. The current content was moved to 0165, notice of board meetings, which has already been passed by this board.
May I get a motion on the table for bylaw 0165.2? Mrs. Hackett?
Okay, I move to adopt the revision of bylaw 0165.2.
Second?
I'll second.
Mr. Phillips, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next?
Thank you. Next on our list is bylaw 0165.3, notice of emergency meetings. This is a revised bylaw, includes a title change, and revised bylaw dealing with emergency meetings. The current content is moved to bylaw 0165.2, which you have just passed.
Thank you. May I get a motion for bylaw 0165.3? Mr. Phillips?
I move adoption of the bylaw as presented.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next?
Thank you. Next is bylaw 0165.4, notice requirements established by other statutes. This is a revised bylaw, which includes a title change, and the revised bylaw dealing with notice requirements established by all other statutes not previously mentioned in the other bylaws.
Thank you. May I get a motion to approve bylaw 165.4? Mrs. Niles?
I move to approve bylaw 0165.4 as noted in our agenda.
Second?
I'll second.
Mr. Phillips? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Next?
Thank you, Madam President. Moving on to 0171.1, excuse me, President, 0171.2, Vice President, and 0171.3, Secretary. These are all revised bylaws recommended by the Policy Committee. They have been reviewed extensively by the Policy Committee. And we'll start with 0171.1, President.
Thank you. May I get a motion on the table about bylaw 171.1? Mr. Phillips?
Thank you, Mr. President. I move adoption of bylaw 0171.1 as presented in our minutes, in our agenda.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Discussion? Mr. Phillips?
I just want to express my gratitude to the committee for their flexibility and for really listening to others on the board, taking into account our concerns.
Well, we are happy to do so. We are a team, and we appreciate everybody's feedback, so thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor of supporting bylaw 171.1, President?
Aye.
Aye. Next?
Thank you. Next on our list is 0171.2, Vice President.
May I get a motion on the table for bylaw 171.2?
I move to approve bylaw 0171.2 as presented.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? Mrs. Niles?
Yes, this came up at our retreat the other night, and we discussed this portion of the bylaw. And since the board is not in the business of management in the corporation, we thought it best to remove that part of B and remove the words "in the management of the corporation." And it would read, "perform other duties appropriate to the office of Vice President as the board determines."
Okay. May I have a, let's see, we have an amendment on the table. May I have a second?
I'll second that amendment.
Okay. So, any discussion about the amendment? Well, then what we have before us is the presented 171.2 for Vice President with the change in B, perform other duties appropriate to the office of Vice President as the board determines. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next.
Thank you. And last on this list is 0171.3, Secretary.
May I get a motion?
Well, I'll move.
Okay.
I move to adopt the bylaw 0171.3 secretary as on the agenda.
Second. Mr. Phillips. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next.
Thank you, Madam President. This brings us to bylaw 0175.1, School Board Conference, Conventions, and Workshops. This is a revised bylaw proposed by the Policy Committee during their review process, and it has been reviewed and revised by the Policy Committee at their most recent meeting last week to reflect suggestions that came out of our last school board meeting.
Thank you. May I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I'll second.
Mr. Phillips. I'll give it to you next, Kathy. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Next.
Thank you. And that brings us to policy 1537, military service. This is a new policy for Carmel Clay Schools. It was proposed by Neola, has been reviewed by the policy committee. Executive summary of this situation: the policies for certified staff and non-certified staff in the military service has been adopted in the last several months, and this is an effort on the part of Neola to make sure that our administrative staff have the same policies in these areas. So I bring to you an identical policy for administration that has been previously passed by for certified and non-certified staff.
Thank you. May I get a motion on the table? Mrs. Freed.
I would like to move that we move for approval policy 1537 on military service as presented in the agenda.
Second.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor? Aye. Next.
Thank you, Madam President. Next, policy 2270, religion in the curriculum policy. This is a revised policy proposed by Neola. It has been extensively revised by the policy committee. Neola offered a revised policy for 2270 for the policy committee's consideration. It was the opinion of the policy committee that the introductory paragraph in the revised policy very clearly defined for our employees their role in regard to religion in the classroom, in the curriculum, excuse me. So therefore, we incorporated that into our current policy and offer you this revision.
Thank you. May I get a motion on the table, please?
Madam President.
Yes.
Thank you. I move approval of the policy 2270, religion in the curriculum policy, as presented.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next.
Policy 2510, adoption of curricular materials. It's a revised policy that does include a title change, was proposed by Neola, has been reviewed and revised by the policy committee. This policy replaces our current policy 2510, which was entitled adoption of textbooks. We, in today's world, adopt many more things other than textbooks to help instruct our students. Neola recommended a very lengthy replacement policy. The policy committee requested that Dr. Dudley review our current policy and the recommendations from Neola, and she offers us this much shortened version for your consideration this evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
May I have a motion on the table? Yes, Mrs. Hackett.
I move to adopt policy 227, oh,
Nope.
I'm on the wrong one, 2510, with thanks to Amy Dudley for shortening it.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Discussion? Mr. Phillips.
I just wanted to express appreciation to Dr. Dudley for helping us to trim the size of our policy and to make it clearer, of course.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Wonderful. All in favor? Policy 2510.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much, Dr. Dillon.
Thank you very much.
And Dana, I need you to check something. I might have jumped the gun. Could you? Oh, not a great term. I might have acted too quickly. Can you look at action item 14, bylaw 171.2? I think I We approved the amendment, but I don't think we voted on the entire bylaw. Can you double check that for me? That's okay. Well then, yes, we do. I would like to do that. Okay, so we have for action item 14, second reading of bylaw 171.2 for vice president. We've approved the amendment. Now we need to look at the big picture. So all in favor of supporting adopting bylaw 171.2 with the amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Great. Thank you very much. And moving right along. Oh, actually, one fun note. Sorry to interrupt. Dr. Dillon, thank you very much. But also, we spoke to the Neola reps today at the Indiana School Board Association meeting, and Dr. Clapp will be getting in contact with you to provide us lots of feedback and some good information for Friday. So we look forward to our meeting. And with that, we'll turn to our superintendent's report.
Thank you, Layla. Just brief feedback from our board retreat. I appreciate the candor and the time that we had Thursday with the Indiana School Board Association rep, not only talking about school governance, which is always an important topic, but the strategic vision of student-centered decision-making that I think will be a very helpful guide as we look forward to not only the vision, but the goals and actions therein. Looking very forward to the October 14th presentation, the workshop when we discuss the goals for this year and beyond, and the real excitement of getting process and that vision into action. I think the speaker today was actually very helpful in guiding in plain terms what we need to do when we make decisions about process and engagement, true engagement of the employees, both certified and support, as decisions are made and as the goals are acted out with people in the Carmel Clay Schools. So looking very forward to that October 14th meeting and appreciate the time spent last Thursday evening.
Well, thank you. Do we have some board member reports? No? Okay. Well, I would like to thank the board and the administration for helping us run a very efficient meeting tonight. We had a lot of material to cover, and even though we started late, it is less than an hour and a half long. Yoo-hoo! So with that, I'd like to thank, on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank everybody for attending and for being attuned to what's going on in the district. Meeting adjourned.
Good job running it. Thank you.
I'm a little too excited that we were moving through our, I know, we're done.